Today we are talking to communicators, the professionals working in government agencies and private organizations, auxiliaries who provide additional capability and capacity when needed, and volunteers who are interested in helping when there is a call. Our topic today is PACE planning. What is it? What role do professionals have? And what about the auxiliaries and the volunteers? See how this simple yet powerful process can help to make our communities more resilient and secure. Stick around. Some people think I have many modes of communication if I need them. I've got Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram. The problem is all of those different apps are riding on the same circuit. That means none of them will work. Anytime that you've got another method that relies on the same circuit as your primary method, that's no alternative. Many government agencies and private organizations also suffer from the same type of thinking. Episode 42 here on Radio KD8TTE talked about how you can use your amateur radio license, skill, and equipment for public service. Volunteers need to know the agencies, NGOs, they all have primary communication methods. They use them every day. They have internet service. They have the public switch telephone network. They've got radio systems like the P25, like the MARCS program that we have in Ohio. Some providers will also offer very high reliability, priority access, and they'll want to be everything to a public safety organization in particular. FirstNet is a good example. Agencies, NGOs, and others need to have a realistic view and to understand what their options really are. FirstNet in particular has been billed as a solution to a nationwide problem of having first responders able to communicate. By having a modern system where first responders have priority access, the theory goes, we'll always have communication and don't need to navigate all of the difficult waters of interoperability with radio. As we have seen, including in the Nashville Christmas Day bombing, that's not how it works. An explosion in front of a commercial communications facility was able to cause damage to structures in the immediate area. It caused consumer telephone and internet outages, including FirstNet, including 911, as far away as Alabama and Kentucky. 911 outages impacted some centers for over a week. There were plenty of first responders who expressed their disappointment online and were very clear that they were told that there would always be redundancy in the system. These kinds of failures would not happen, and yet here they are yet again facing problems. Some of the agencies that reported that they were able to continue operations cited use of a PACE plan. The point of primary service is that it usually works. It's commonly available service, and it's often available from many different providers. In fact, for critical services, why have just one provider when you can have two? This is where we get into the world of alternate. Sometimes it really is just that simple. It's basically the same, just having an alternate. You get service from a second provider. You configure everything in such a way that there's failover so that when one fails, the other one will be there to pick up the service. This is common with internet and public switch telephone network services, but you need to be sure that there is not any common infrastructure between them. If you run everything through the same bit of wire and that's where the outage is, that's not going to do you a lot of good. The same is true of cell service. Do you have everybody on exactly the same carrier, or do you have a combination so that people in various locations have service from one provider as well as the other, such that if one is lost, others at the same site will still have service? When we're talking about contingency, that means that both primary and alternate are failing. They might both actually be in a failure state, or they could just be overloading. It could be that adding another alternate to this mix will not work. If we've got internet routing tables that have been poisoned, adding a third internet provider might not do any good. Communication towers can be taken out by a tornado or some other kind of disaster, so again, going to something else that would require that tower might not do any good. The path that we want to take is just not going to be there to get that job done. And it's probably not economically feasible to have that up and ready all the time anyway. We might need to have special types of equipment. We might need to have special modes of operation that we're using. So what are some of the options? Even with cell networks, there could still be some options. Data will be the first to go, so that means your apps are gone. But you might be able to get through if you make a voice-only call. Even in the event that you can't get a strong enough signal or a reliable enough signal or able to hold the circuit, it could be that you're able to send SMS text. In that case, with a weaker signal that has only intermittent connectivity to a tower, perhaps one that's further away, you might be able to get a message out, and you may also be able to receive messages in. So that's an option that's important to remember. As we continue down the path of thinking about contingencies, what about satellite phone and internet service? It's going to be more resilient than terrestrial options. It's not going to be reliant on the towers that can be damaged. It does, however, have some important characteristics, like it is relatively expensive, especially if you're going from sat phone to sat phone. There could be greater latency, especially if you're using data that you might notice. And it's not going to work just anywhere. If you're indoors, if you're in the city, you might have some difficulty finding a bit of open sky that's going to give you the connection you need. In a large-scale internet or public switch telephone network outage, it might be that the place you're trying to reach is also experiencing internet and phone service outages, so that's not going to work. If the problem is being driven or exacerbated by space weather, it's possible that the sat phone isn't going to work. Finally, they don't have a lot of extra capacity, and they can be overloaded. Another option is land mobile radio service. Recall that this option got particular mention in the SAFECOM case study on the Nashville Christmas bombing. These systems tend to have more limited coverage, but that can be aided through repeaters. Of course, if the repeaters are linked by internet connection or towers that are knocked down, that's not going to work so well. So now we get into talking about working without infrastructure. At this point, maybe not everybody is going to be able to talk to everybody else directly. We're going to have to work by messaging and by relaying those messages from station to station. That means that you might need to get radio stations up and running in arbitrary places, and you're also going to need more people. You're going to need to have operators at those stations able to perform critical messaging functions. In fact, they become your infrastructure. This channel focuses on contingency and especially emergency communications. It's not because the other stuff doesn't work, but no matter how good it is, there are times when it will fail. When those systems fail, it will be because of some kind of disaster. It will mean that there are big problems, and that means that those failures are going to be especially poorly timed. When people need help, when we need to protect life and property, we need those communication systems more than ever. We can't just throw money and gear at the problem, however. We need to have organization. There need to be standards so that the users of those communication circuits that are being provided in emergencies understand what their capability is, understand what their capacity is. Emergency managers with that knowledge can plan their communications accordingly, helping to protect life and property. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, has been developing these standards. Training resources help to ensure that we address common tasks in compatible ways while providing flexibility to address local needs. The position task books for auxiliary communicators includes tasks like working with the authority having jurisdiction, understanding what the critical tasks are, being self-sufficient, and establishing field expedient stations. At the emergency layer, we're now at third backup. As we've seen, nothing always works. The PACE planning process is invaluable for your own station or for your own organization. Either way, it's tremendously powerful and important. It's not just a matter of being able to throw things at the problem. It's going to be introducing the mode of operation that works. It's a new reality. That means it's not going to work like our primary and even our alternate. So it's going to require practice. We're going to have to work with the equipment. We're going to have to work with the volunteers providing the equipment and the expertise necessary to work it. This is the reason for our annual Black Swan Communications exercise. See links for that below. As an agency or an organization using auxiliaries, you need not to be afraid to set standards and hold those standards for your organization to be able to achieve the mission at hand. So in summary, the PACE plan: primary, alternate, contingency, and then emergency. It's 4 layers for your plan to communicate. Make sure that those layers are independent and that you know how to work the plan. That is going to make you and your organization more resilient. You will be better able to weather the storm. You will also be quicker to return to normal because you don't have the same backlog as if you had been completely cut off. Check the links below for more. Like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to make sure that you catch all of our content on emergency communications. This is Radio KD8TTE.